Martha. My name is Robert Brunk. I am a sergeant with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. I work in the rural area of San Diego County. Just real briefly, the size of San Diego County is square miles is equivalent to the state of Rhode Island. And about half of that, 2,400 square miles, is considered unincorporated area. So we have mountain and desert areas that the Sheriff's Department covers, and the Highway Patrol is responsible for the traffic portion of that. So I'm going to hand it over to our crime prevention specialist, Martha. She's got some information that might help start some questions that you may have about the rural area.
Hi, good morning. My name is Martha Gonzales. I am the crime prevention specialist at the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, and I'm assigned to the rural area, which is what we're going to be talking about today. We do have a small presentation here to share, and we're going to get that worked out here so that I can screen share and share that with all of you, but I would love to tell you a little bit about it. At the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, we have different areas that are assigned by station. And over in the rural area, we cover a huge geographical area, as Sergeant Brunk alluded to. So for us, we're talking about the Ramona substation, we're talking about Julian, all the way up to Ranchita, Warner Springs, and then all the way east to Borrego Springs. So there's a lot happening there. There are, of course, some regular things that happen from time to time. We work in partnership with the California Highway Patrol, so CHP monitors traffic in those areas. But there are a few regular type of things that we deal with. Sarge, maybe you can speak to that, the types of things that we deal with out in rural areas.
Sure, I'll let you see if you can pull that PowerPoint up while we're talking. So a couple of things that might interest you as far as real estate and selling points and stuff out here in rural is, first of all, anybody that's interested in living out in the East County needs to be self-sufficient. We have, you can't just drive down the street to go to Home Depot or go to the grocery store or anything like that. The other thing is when we have high winds or bad weather, a lot of times SDG&E for fire reasons will shut down the power. So a lot of people have generators and are off the grid in parts of the county where solar generators and stuff like that are great selling points, but also a necessity for being able to survive during long periods of outages, or if we have major natural disasters, whether it's a fire or flooding or earthquake. So I see Martha's got the PowerPoint up, so I'll let her finish off with or talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So here you see the map. And I think the reason it's important to see this visual is because what you'll realize is that we're pretty far removed, well, from everything else. That's why we're rural, right? And so that is going to lead us right into a couple more things we're going to talk about here that includes things like evacuations and the types of preparedness activities that we really should be involved in year round so that we can protect ourselves. So we do have rural deputies out in our areas. We also have a really strong senior volunteer patrol team at the Sheriff's Department. And they're fantastic. They assist with things like vacation checks when people are away from their homes. In some areas of our rural command, we have quite a few vacation homes, and we have some people who only live in Julian part of the year, or who only come out to Borrego Springs during part of the year. But we also have some elderly communities. So we also have the volunteer patrol that utilizes the different tools that they have to implement the YANA program. That's the You Are Not Alone program. And they do some really great work. They come out and visit with these individuals, check up on them, phone calls, personal visits, things like that. So this then is going to take us into talking about how this geographic location is going to potentially put us into a position where we need to prepare for evacuation. So Sergeant Brunk, maybe you can talk about how folks can stay updated?
Yep, one of the great things the county has, and I'll give you the website, it's readysandiego.org. If you go to that, and that's even for if you're living, in urban areas, not just rural, it talks about being prepared for major disasters, power outages, flooding, earthquakes, fires. You need to plan ahead of time, especially out here in rural, like I said, it's more critical for your survival to have those things. There also shows you how to download Alert San Diego. Now, with that being said, especially again, out in rural, talking about power outages, you may not have a computer, or your cell phone service may go down depending upon what type of emergency it is, and what type of damage has been done, either whether it's an earthquake or a fire, as to whether the cell towers will work. So having some knowledge and pre-idea of where to evacuate to is really in your best interest. And depending what's going to drive how we respond with the fire department to the emergency is really how the weather dictates to us how things are going to go. In a wildfire where we have Santa Ana winds, and we've all seen the news and the dry conditions and everything else that's going on throughout the state and other parts of the country. When we get really heavy winds here in San Diego, especially up here in the mountain areas coming off the deserts, we're looking at 60, 70 mile an hour winds easy. Last year, during one of the wind events, the Pine Valley Bridge logged 127 mile an hour winds, which that's hurricane force winds. That's why they closed down the 8 to large vehicles and really anybody. So if that's happening, the deputies will be getting in embedded with the fire department right away. And we talk with the battalion chiefs, and when we, even before we start setting up incident command centers, we start telling the communication center to start sending out alerts through Alert San Diego, or through, radio stations and television, as to where temporary evacuation points may be. Because again, if this is something that's very fluid and moving quickly, we've already pre-designated spots throughout the county as to where to go to, and that's where they're going to be directed to evacuate to. Sometimes you may also be told just to shelter in place and to, use your common sense as to whether or not you need to evacuate out, because again, out here in rural, we don't have the large freeways, and things are oftentimes you get bottlenecked if we get too many people in one place. And I think you all remember what happened up at the Paradise Fire when everyone was trying to leave there, and a lot of people got caught on the freeway, or not on the freeway, on a roadway that they didn't survive. So that's some things to keep in consideration for being out here. I know Martha mentioned the senior volunteer program, and if you know of anyone that's interested in that, we're always recruiting people for that, and there's really quite a lot of variation in the professions. We've had doctors, attorneys, airline pilots, other people have had previous either medical or military or law enforcement experience that are senior volunteers. So it's really quite a diverse group of people, and they do help us quite a bit in urban and rural settings. The other thing that people can volunteer for is the community emergency response team, where the county will train you, and you'll assist in a lot of these types of events, whether it be evacuations or like a lot with the COVID response in getting people vaccinated, or just getting them, medical assistance. So I'm not sure if anybody has any other questions, or I don't know if there's any more to the PowerPoint that Martha has.
Right. So when we start talking about evacuation, there's of course a lot more involved, right? Making your plan, all of the emergency resources. And I know we're going to have Red Cross also present in Humane Society. So there's going to be a little bit more on that. But essentially what we have is some really, really strong partnerships here with CAL FIRE, with the CERT teams, and they all work together to make sure that we address all of the missed pieces. You might have an individual who has physical limitations and can't physically get up and out of their home during an evacuation. So all of those types of things are taken into account. So I also want to take some time to talk about just life in rural areas. There are some things that we like to put into place, put out into the community that are going to make things work better for the community and for the sheriff's department. And of course, at the very top of the list is going to be communication. So how do you report suspicious activity? What is suspicious activity? Obviously, 911 is going to be utilized for emergencies, but emergencies, we have to really be clear about what that means. That's going to be a crime that's in progress, a threat to life or to property that's significant, right? So we definitely want to make sure that 911 is reserved for those emergency calls. But if there are non-emergencies, things like there's suspicious activity you'd like to report, some information that you'd like to share that is of value, then we also have a non-emergency number. And I wanted to make sure to put that up here on the presentation. So you'll see that it's that 858 number. That non-emergency line goes directly to our communication center. And the same operators that are answering the 911 calls are answering these non-emergency calls, but they're prioritizing properly. So that's absolutely the right thing to do. And when you do get on the line with a dispatcher at the communication center, there's going to be some real specific information that's going to be collected. So we always like to be very clear with the community about what it is that's going to be asked of you. Your information will be taken down. You can call anonymously if you prefer to, but we really want to know that we're collecting good, accurate information. So be a good witness, right? Taking note of things like license plate numbers, descriptions, things like that are going to be really useful. Recently, we did roll out the text to 911 feature. It was put into place for individuals who are in a position where they absolutely cannot make a phone call. So you can imagine what kind of situation that might be. It could be somebody who is deaf or hard of hearing, somebody who has speaking limitations, or you are genuinely in a position where you cannot climb out of where you are to audibly make that phone call. So you want to make sure to use that only if a phone call is not an option. So what types of things are suspicious activity? As an example, there might be somebody who is going up and down a row of cars and jiggling those handles. That's somewhat suspicious, right? Maybe somebody who's walking around a home and checking all the windows. That may be suspicious. A lot of times people don't call because they think, well, deputies have more important things to do, or I'm not even sure if this is a suspicious at all. I'm not sure. So I like to say, let the dispatcher make that call. Make your phone call, share your information, and then let the dispatcher be in contact with local deputies, and then they can make that call. If they show up and there's nothing happening, that's okay. You still made that information available to us. If you do have information to report, that is important for us because we might be able to notice some trends. We might be able to notice that we're receiving some more activity calls on Thursday nights, or more activity calls in this certain geographical area. Maybe it's the 5th call we received with similar type of circumstances. And so then somebody in like Sergeant Brunk's position can maybe make a different patrol decision. Maybe they're sending deputies out at different times, or paying more attention to those areas. And of course, on this topic of communication, if you do have some important information, we like to send you over to Crime Stoppers. So that's the website or the phone number that you see here on the screen. Sergeant, do you have anything on this, on suspicious activity?
No, I think just to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, again, with out here in rural, it's not like living in the urban area. So response times, the people that may be interested in moving out here, I think as a realtor, you want to just make sure to let them know that response times are going to be greater than what they would be in an urban area. That goes for medical, fire, and us as well. We're all residents that live out here. We're required to be out here 24 hours a day on call while we're working. So it's not the same setup that you would have as a patrol station if you live into the city. And the only other one thing I think I would say about kind of getting not necessarily suspicious activity, but going to preparedness is that even if you don't live out here, if you come out during the summertime to hike, we do a lot of rescues for people that are not prepared to come out to the rural areas to even enjoy, whether it's camping or hiking. They'll come out and it's 100 degrees outside. They don't have the water, or they don't bring enough water or the type of protective clothing, and we end up having to do rescues with a helicopter or search and rescue. And that's the same thing in the winter time. A lot of people come up here in the winter. They're not familiar with driving in the snow, or they don't come prepared with gear in case they go off the road, that they can survive a couple of hours before a tow truck gets up here to get them out. They don't have the clothing or whatever to be suitable for the elements. So that's just one thing I'd like to add to the rural part of it.
Yeah, super important to know. One of the things that happens on rural areas is that mailboxes are a little more vulnerable. So you see this picture here, it's pretty typical of what we see at the end of a long road up to some houses that are pretty spread out. You do see some houses with some significant space around them, and then you have mail stops like this. So we do like to remind residents to pay close attention to what they're dropping in the mail. If you're dropping something into your outgoing mail and flipping up that little flag, then you want to definitely make sure you're not sending out cash, checks, items of value. You may have the option to replace that with a more secure mailbox, something with a lock that you can access. So something just to keep in mind. You may have to modify the way you live when you move from urban over to rural. A lot of different things are going to apply. So essentially, this is more of a cooperation effort. We at the department will do our part, but we also would really love it if the residents do their part. Because we're out in rural areas and we have some different standards as far as lighting, the further east that you go, then we want to make sure that homes have proper lighting, that your front door is well lit, that your house numbers are well lit so that you can be located by, say, an ambulance or a deputy who's coming out for your emergency call. We want to make sure that you are taking the time to secure your home, your vehicles, your valuables. Sometimes when you get out into rural areas, especially after a long time, there's some complacency that sets in. Well, nobody ever comes up my road, or we never lock our doors. But we like to have people lock their doors, secure their vehicles as well. Along with that comes some maintenance and some planning. So part of that planning is going to be the preparedness information. So Sergeant Brunk shared about Ready San Diego, and you're going to hear a little bit more about preparation efforts here in the next couple of presentations. But there's also some maintenance that can be done to help protect your home. Things like clearing brush around your home, having smoke alarms that are in working order, making sure that you're maintaining your security systems, your cameras, your alarms, whatever it is that you have in place. So this is one way that we can work together in cooperation to make sure that we're doing absolutely the best to keep the community safe. The way that we can support you is through some of the services that we offer. So at the department, we offer residential security consultations. We can come out, actually a crime prevention specialist would come out, that's me, usually in the rural areas, but that is going to be a personal visit, and that's going to be a walkthrough, taking a look at what types of vulnerabilities that you have and making some suggestions as to how we can improve upon those vulnerabilities. It could be changing out the screws in the strike plates into the door jambs. It could be encouraging you to put some lighting here and there, maybe some landscaping suggestions. But they're usually things that we as residents don't that we don't see. We tend to miss them. So when you come in, when you have somebody come in with a second set of eyes, that's usually very helpful. We also have car seat safety inspections and installations in the rural area now. Historically, residents did have to drive a distance down to Chula Vista or El Cajon, I believe Oceanside. Those were kind of the locations where you had to get to. But when I got to the rural area, we were able to identify this gap. So we're able to now offer car seat safety inspection installations at any point in a family's progression of those car seats. We also do a lot of educational stuff. So if there's a community group that you belong to, maybe a neighborhood, and you want to pull together a neighborhood watch, then we can come out and share some information with you. We can even customize some presentations if there's some things that you want to learn about. And of course, the Sheriff's Department loves to be out in the community. We love to be involved, get to know our residents, our neighbors. So any sort of events, community involvement events, of course, we'd love to be involved. I do want to take a moment just to mention the crime-free multi-housing program. This is offered by the San Diego Sheriff's Department, and it is meant for mostly property managers or owners of multi-housing. So that might be a fourplex, a condominium, maybe a mobile home park. We don't have a ton of those, but there are some here and there. So if you're interested in that, then you may want to just check out our website. There is an entire section dedicated to the crime-free multi-housing program. If you think it's a good fit for you, then that may be something you're interested in. We actually have a training coming up on October 8th, if you are interested in that. So that is, in a very brief nutshell, some of the ways that the San Diego County Sheriff's Department supports the rural area. I wanted to make sure to include our contact information, so you'll see that here on the screen. And I want to just take a moment to say thank you for being involved, and I'd love to answer any questions, as I'm sure Sarge would hear if there are any.
Yep, I don't see anything more on the chat. You're obviously at any time welcome to ask us some questions, or you know how to contact us. And I want to thank Shirley for inviting us. And Steve is next with the Red Cross, and we work really closely in emergencies with them, especially out here in rural, and getting people either temporary or permanent housing for the duration of whatever the emergency is. So I will, I guess, hand it over to Steve.
Okay, well, thank you, Sergeant Brunk and Martha. That was some really interesting information. So let me go ahead and share my screen here real quick. And there we go. Okay, there we are. So I'm a volunteer with the Red Cross, and we're certainly delighted to be here to talk about preparedness and all that. And let me just be up front. I have a very simple goal, and that is to encourage you to take some preparation steps. But you know, it's only fair that we share with you a little bit about what the Red Cross is doing to be prepared. And by the way, I have Randy McKenzie is also a Red Cross volunteer who is in this meeting and assisting, keeping track of the chats and all that. So big thanks to Randy for being here. So here's the topics we're going to cover in the next 15 to 20 minutes. First off, why should we prepare? You know, what are we concerned about? So I'll go over some of the local disasters that we have a concern about. What is the Red Cross doing to be prepared? You know, so how do we respond? What do we do to get ready? How do we help our community to prepare? And then we'll wrap that up with things you can do to be prepared. And that's really an extremely important piece of this puzzle, you know, as was mentioned earlier, you know, about preparedness. So there are the three big things: get a kit, make a plan, be informed, which you've probably heard about before. We're not going to have time in this session to go through all those in details, but I am going to hit some of the highlights of that. I really like this proverb. Just because the river is quiet does not mean the crocodiles have left. And you know, preparedness is like that. It's a sort of a thing that we have on our to-do list somewhere, and it kind of moves up and down the list, but it's really hard to get to it because it's tomorrow, you know, kind of a thing. But the fact is, we never know when we need to be prepared. especially here in San Diego, where we have so many what we call zero notice threats. It's not like a hurricane. We get several days notice and go and buy supplies and stuff. Here, things happen all of a sudden. Now, earlier, Sergeant Brunk mentioned some of the local disasters we're concerned about. There's the big three. And I think if you just take a few seconds, you'll think of those big three disasters. And here they are: earthquakes, wildfires, and floods. All right, those are our really big three ones. And of course, the wildfires, is on top of everybody's mind, especially right now. But earthquakes, that's always something that can happen to us as well. And I know we don't think about floods all the time. I've been a local disaster responder for about 5 years with the Red Cross, and I've been to several floods. So I can assure you it does happen, and it's very, very devastating. But that considered, do you have any idea what the #1 disaster is in the United States when it comes to human lives lost, injuries, and so forth? Every year, it's more than hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, earthquakes, all those combined. This disaster is worse than that. And that is house fires, incredibly enough. I mean, look at these numbers. Every 90 seconds in the United States, there's a house fire. Every single day, 7 people die, 36 injured. These are huge numbers. A lot of people don't know that the Red Cross responds to house fires, and we don't respond to all of them. When the fire department is assessing the situation and they realize that the displaced people don't seem to have a game plan, they don't know what to do, they don't know where they're going to go, then they call in the Red Cross. 24/7, we're out to those. About 250 times a year in San Diego County, we're responding to a home fire. I've been to 2 of them this week myself. So it is a very, very common disaster. So I want to pass that on to you as top of mind as something that you can prepare for as well. So a little bit about the Red Cross. The American Red Cross, you can see our main services that we do here. Disaster cycle services is probably the most obvious. I am here, and Randy are here, part of that in the preparation part of disaster cycle services. They're the hurricane responders and all that sort of thing. Services to the armed forces is helping our military people when they run into difficulties with sicknesses overseas and with trying to connect with family members. We have a very large focus on service to the armed forces. International services provides assistance with immunizations, connecting people back up in wartime areas and so forth all around the world. Biomedical services, many of you are aware of the blood services. Many of you have probably given blood at one of our blood drives. The Red Cross provides about 40% of the country's blood supply. And then training services. You may have taken a first aid kit, a babysitting course, a swimming lifeguard course. All kinds of training services are provided by the Red Cross. Our local chapter of the Red Cross, which is San Diego Imperial Counties, and we are under the Southern California region. You can see the numbers. We're covering a large area, a lot of people, and we're largely a volunteer organization. So of 6,000 volunteers or so in Southern California, there's 115 employees. So it is very much a volunteer organization. And our focus, while we do all those other things, is to prevent, prepare for, and respond to disasters, is where a lot of our local efforts are going. So what are we doing here locally to get ready for a disaster? We have shelter locations identified. At the moment, about 267, roughly about 267 shelters. Those look like gymnasiums, recreation centers, and churches and so forth, where we know how many people could be put there temporarily, how many could be put there in a longer term, with cots and so forth, what facilities they have there in terms of showers and so forth. We have strategically located trailers with shelter supplies all over the county so that we can get these shelters stood up fairly quickly. We've identified hundreds of large and small feeding sources, and we have this crazy database at the Red Cross. We can tell you how many burritos the Albertos on Mission Gorge can crank out in an hour. We need to know that, because you'd be surprised how often we're supplying feeding for various events around the county on an emergency basis. We have hundreds of trained volunteers in things such as feeding, sheltering, logistics, health services, mental health services, just all kinds of things. So they're ready to go. And in fact, many of them are working all the time in those fields. And we have people out of San Diego deployed to disasters all the time. There's pretty much always somebody somewhere. Right now, we have a lot of people from San Diego up in Northern California working the fire situation up there. I've been to 2 hurricanes out east. We always have volunteers out there, and that's good for our preparation because volunteers who have been to disasters become familiar with some of the challenges of that, and they are considerable, so they're ready to work when we have one here. So one of the things that, of course, is top of mind is disaster evacuation. So like a wildfire, for example. I live in a wildfire area, as I imagine many of you do as well. And so, well, what's going to happen? The sheriffs have talked about already some of the, about the evacuation orders and that sort of a thing. You don't have to wait for an order. Leaving early is a good idea in many cases. But there's kind of a 2-step program to this. One is the first step is a temporary evacuation point, a TEP. So that location is usually designated by the County Office of Emergency Services or CAL FIRE. Once that's designated, the Red Cross sends a rapid response team out there with minimal supplies, with communication so that they can help arriving people understand what's going on, look out for any assistance they may need. And they're fairly quickly followed up with canteen services and other volunteers and with other functions as needed to support the TEP. At some point, that may turn into a sheltering operation. As I mentioned before, it might be in a gym, a church, somewhere. That's where we're going to have plenty of food available, information, reunification services for families that have been separated, health, mental, spiritual support. And one of our great partners in that is the Humane Society, because of course, everybody's concerned about what do we do with our pets. And Laura Leonard will be talking to you right after me about what the Humane Society does. I want to mention, because home fires are such a big deal, we have a home fire campaign. It's a little bit different right now through the COVID, but we're still getting some of these out there. We will provide, along with our partner, the Burn Institute, free smoke alarms installed at people's homes. Mostly, we're focused on senior and low-income communities. We help them develop an escape plan because these fires these days, I hear it over and over. I've gone to about 150 home fires. How fast the fire was, how they barely got out, and sometimes, sadly, they don't. All right, so we help them develop an escape plan. There's been over 800 lives saved under this program. And here's the contact information. Just go to the website, soundthealarm.org/SoCal, or call this phone number. In the chat, you're going to receive an email with this information and other information. So don't worry too much about capturing all the things that I might reference in here. You're going to receive a list of these kinds of things. Now, another big disaster is earthquakes. And I often put my preparation discussions in context of earthquakes, simply because if you're ready for an earthquake, you're kind of ready for most other disasters. I mean, there are some other tweaks and so forth, but you really are. And I've done a lot of these presentations and have asked hundreds and hundreds of people, who thinks the big one's not going to come? And so far, I've not had one person say, nah, that's not going to happen. We all know it's going to happen. We just don't know when. And have you ever thought about where you might be, where your family might be, what you might be doing when that happens? Maybe you're at work, kids are at school, maybe you're on a freeway late at night with the baby in the backseat. Anything could happen. Are you ready for that situation? Do we know what to do? Do the kids know what to do? Have you ever thought about the many, many things we take for granted as being available that immediately after the big one will be gone? They won't be there. I mean, take a look at this list. Electricity, gas, gasoline, no electricity, no way the pumps are going to work. Water, sewage can be out. Communications of all kind, transportation of all kind. Our emergency services, remember, our fire and police also live here. They're victims too. They don't really have a way to get to you. You don't really have a way to call them. So they're not going to be able to be with all of the people in need super quickly in these situations. Medical services are either inaccessible or overloaded. There could be flooding, fires, landslides, down power lines. The banks and ATMs to be closed. So if you don't have any cash, well, it may not matter because most of the stores are going to be closed anyway. How does that sound? I mean, if that's where you're starting from, are you ready for that? And that's why the Red Cross, we say the first 72 hours are up to you. So remember, first responders and even second responders like the Red Cross are just not going to be there right away. It's not possible. So that's why it's so important that we are able to pretty much take care of ourselves for at least 3 days to even up to 2 weeks. And many times that's kind of a neighborhood thing, you know, knowing who in the neighborhood really knows first aid and can help us through these things. The good news is we can take simple steps to prepare ourselves, our family, and even our nearby community for this sort of an event. Now, one of the other things you'll receive a link to is to this book, and it covers the 3 major areas: get a kit, make a plan, be informed, quite thoroughly. And I would encourage you to go through the book and take the action steps. We're not going to have time to go through all those things today, but I'm going to just hit a couple of things. I think most of us who work in preparedness say, if you're going to do one thing, if you're only going to do one thing, get a kit. Get a kit, okay, so that you're ready, you know, to survive for at least a while. So who needs a kit? We need to think about all of our family members when we have a kit pulled together, that we're taking into account all of their needs. That includes pets. Where do we need these kits? Well, certainly at home, and we need to be able to take the kit with us if we have to evacuate. In our car, if we don't have our car at work, maybe we need one at work, or just basically where we spend a lot of time at. And how can you get the kits? You can buy pre-made kits from Amazon and Costco and a lot of sources. But you know, you're probably going to have to customize that. It maybe is good for a starter kit, but it hardly ever really meets the needs for any given family. So here's an example of a kit. Now let me tell you a little story about this kit. I was doing a bunch of these presentations, and I got this nightmare that I'm out in the parking lot putting my stuff away, you know, getting ready to leave, and one of the attendees comes out and says, hey, Mr. Preparedness dude, why don't you show me your kit? It was like, gulp, because the fact is, it was done on my to-do list too. I didn't have one in my car, and I thought, I can't let that happen. So a few years ago for Christmas, I made kits for all my adult children's household, their cars, and for ours as well. And this is one of the kits that I made for a home, and it's a rolling duffel bag. You don't have to worry about reading all the stuff on there. This is another slide that is going to be sent to you by email later, so that you'll see this example. This is what made sense for my family. It's probably different for your family, but it gives you an idea of some of the things that could be in there. Likewise, for my cars and my adult children's cars, I used a backpack, you know, and a much smaller one because there's no room to keep a big one in the car anyway. With those critical things, you know, to at least get by for a while. So kits. And when you put your kit together, here's some examples of things that are sometimes overlooked. You know, we don't think about some of these things, like a paper map, for example. You know, an earthquake, we lose electricity, we lose communications. That means we lose Google Maps too. You know, so unless you loaded that down, which is possible to do, load it down, but then of course without electricity, you're going to run out of battery. You're not going to have a map. So you know, those old time paper maps can be pretty valuable in these kind of cases. Cash. Friends and neighbors contact list. Does anybody remember anybody's phone numbers anymore? It's all in contact list. So having something printed out that you can use, you get the idea. Going through and getting an idea of what your family needs will help you to complete your kit. And then in the make a plan area, there's many things to consider, but I just want to touch on this one thing. And the reason I selected this one area is because when I go to home fires, if everybody was okay, nobody was seriously injured, everybody and all the pets, you know, were okay, almost always the next thing I hear is people realizing, oh my gosh, I've lost my identification, my birth certificate, my credit cards, all my family photos are gone. And they begin to realize some of these things can't be replaced. So this is a very important thing to think about, is Where can you put these vital documents and these treasured family photos and so forth? You know, there are places like safety deposit boxes. You can put some things in your kit. You can have a fire resistant safe, although I might underline the word resistant. They are not, unless you buy a super expensive one, they're not fireproof. And, you know, but what I like to do, as I said, I live in a wildfire area, and I figure I need to think about things in terms of a total burn down. So I scan photos, I scan IDs on all that stuff, and I store it up in the cloud. You can do it for free, say on Google Drive, or you can get a backup service like Carbonite that just every day sucks up the information on your computer and stores it in a place where you can access it from any computer in the world if you have the credentials to do so. So something to think about. And then, of course, making sure we have appropriate and adequate insurance. I would say close to probably 80% of the renters that we go to on home fires do not have renter's insurance. And I've also had 3 homeowners that did not have insurance. I mean, their lives are changed basically forever. You know, especially the homeowners. I mean, it's hard to imagine, but how do you recover from that? And many tenants really go through extreme hardship. I know many of you in real estate. I would encourage you to encourage your customers to make sure they and their loved ones have the right insurance. And I added the word adequate some time ago because in wildfires, we've seen wildfire comes in, takes out thousands of homes. The cost to rebuild that can escalate. Despite some of the state laws limiting that, you know, we still only have so much labor and so much materials. So reviewing insurance coverage is an extremely important thing to do. These are some resources. Again, I'm not going to go through these in detail. The sergeant already mentioned the CAL FIRE, the Ready San Diego one. You're going to receive a document that lists all of these and actually some more things. These have some excellent resources. I might mention, I really like the Earthquake Country Alliance one. There's a lot of information in there that can help you prepare for an earthquake. And some of the thinking there has changed, by the way. So if you're still thinking about standing in the doorway, you're going to want to review that site. That's not the recommended way to ride out an earthquake these days. And what kind of Red Crosser would I be if I didn't mention the volunteer opportunities? And we are always needing volunteers. You know, we pretty much whatever your skill sets, whatever your interest, we have something you can do in the Red Cross. These are just some examples of a few of the things that some of our volunteers do. So if you're looking to serve your community and looking to learn new things and get involved with it, Red Cross is a great place to do that. Whoops, something just happened there. There we go. Okay, and if you are interested in volunteering, you can see the contact information for Kaylee Hernsberger down in the lower left. 619-455-9513. Give Kaylee a call and she will be certain to set you up. So I also wanted you to know we do a number of preparedness presentations. This one was a little shorter than we normally do. We usually go about 45 minutes to an hour, including Q&A, depending upon how much that is. But these are the topics here that we usually cover. So general preparedness and in a lot more depth than what I did. Home fires, earthquakes, wildfires, and ready rating. So ready rating is a way of testing to see if your business is ready for a disaster and is going to be able to recover in a reasonable kind of a way. Now, to schedule those presentations, we're happy to do them for any group. It can be for a business, an HOA, an apartment owners and tenants group, and so forth. Any of those groups, we're happy to do it. Just contact Melissa Altman at that phone number, and her email address, easy, melissa.altman@redcross.org, and she will be happy to schedule that. And if you have any other questions for me, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, steve.deal@redcross.org. And with that, we have a wrap, and I am, let's see, are there any questions we want to address before we move over to the Humane Society? No?
Any in the chat?
Nope. Okay, well, with that, let me stop this share. And Laura, and I'm so happy to introduce Laura Leonard from the Humane Society, one of our truly valued partnerships. So Laura, you're up.
Thank you. Oh, and I do see now a question. What about the smoke alarm program? I think you talked about that a little bit. Was there a specific question about that?
Yeah, certainly the smoke alarm program is where we provide free smoke alarms, usually to low income and senior citizen places, especially mobile homes, because our experiences, they burn so quickly, they're so dangerous, you know, and you know, I didn't throw this stat out, but homes that have smoke alarms and a fire occurs, they have half the probability of a fatality as homes that do not have smoke alarms. That's an actual statistic. You've cut your risk in half. I did a fire just earlier this week. The fire started about 10 o'clock at night. It started in the attic, apparently from a rodent chewing the insulation, it seems. It nearly destroyed the house. There were 6 people living there. They had no working smoke alarms. Had it just been a few hours later, say 2 or 3 in the morning, and that fire went, I'm sad to say, I think we would have had a fatality there. So we are big promoters of smoke alarms, so much so that we're willing to go out there and put them in for free. Okay, so and if you need any other questions about that, shoot me an email, steve.deal@redcross.org. Laura, you're up.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That's great information. And thank you, Shirley, for having me here today on behalf of San Diego Humane Society. We're really thankful to be included. We work with partners through the county and the Red Cross. So glad that we can be a part of this presentation today. My name is Laura Leonard. I'm our Community Outreach Manager for San Diego Humane Society. I am not a first responder to our disaster team. They're all very busy preparing and in trainings this week, but I am here just to share a little bit about what our team does. We have an emergency response team or special response team. Let's see if my slides will work. There they are. And they respond to disasters all around San Diego, as well as we deploy our volunteers and staff out to other natural disasters all around the country. So we actually just had a few come back from the Caldor fires. We've responded to hurricane missions. Oh, sorry, my cat is deciding to join me. He all of a sudden is very interested in what I'm talking about. So yes, we have a team of staff and volunteers trained on different missions and techniques for emergency response. Today, I'm focusing mostly on fire response just because that's what we see the most need for from our team when it comes to rural areas, specifically with large animals and how we can help protect them and get them out of harm's way. But we do respond to any type of disaster. As Steve mentioned, there are floods, earthquakes, and fires, as well as those house fires in San Diego that can happen with no notice at all. So the main thing that we really want people to come away with from our presentation is just including animals in all your planning. So that was some really great information that was shared about having a plan for yourselves and your family and including your pets in that. Some specific things that we ask folks to do when it comes to preparing their pets and other large animals that they have is, really updating their identification. So hopefully everyone already has a microchip for your pet. You can microchip horses, goats, even tortoises. We microchip every adoptable animal that leaves our shelter, besides the really little ones like mice, hamsters, guinea pigs. But a microchip is really your permanent form of identification. So if your pet were to be separated from you in the event of an emergency, that's the way that we can really make sure that they get reunited with you or someone from your family. Practicing transporting your animals, specifically those large animals, if you have horses or other large farm animals, getting them used to transport so that in the event of an emergency, they are comfortable loading into a trailer. It's not seen as something that only happens, once in a blue moon in a scary situation. And that goes for our house pets as well. I know for my cats, they generally think the crate comes out for vet time. That's what their lives, previously to coming to my house was. So I have a crate open at all times for them. I put food inside of there, little treats from time to time. There's a bed in there, so they can go in there as like a comfortable place to just rest and lay down. So it's not something that comes up only in that emergency situation where it would be a lot harder to get them into the crate when I need to. Another thing we ask people to do is just map those evacuation routes, know how to get to safety from your location, wherever that may be. And in those rural areas, you might run into, things like having roads that don't go to an evacuation area or to a through area. So finding out the safest way and alternate ways to get you and your pets to safety. Of course, planning with friends and neighbors to assist if you're not there, if you are going to be at work, you know, during the larger part of the day, and you know you won't be able to get home. For instance, if there's a fire nearby your home and you're not able to cross those fire lines, that you can communicate with neighbors to get the pets out before those lines are drawn. What we've seen in some communities is that areas that house, you know, horses and other livestock, that they are in communication with each other on like a WhatsApp app, and they all know how to care for each other's animals and who might be able to assist in loading them out and getting them to a safe area. That also includes researching where you would want to go. So looking up areas in your immediate area that would be safe and close by you to get animals. There are going to be emergency shelters set up, but the more we can reserve those for the animals and people that are truly in need, if there are other alternates like boarding facilities, arenas, places that are nearby that you can get your animals yourself or with the help of neighbors and friends, then that will alleviate our emergency response team to respond to those folks that don't have that option. And of course, looking at defensible space when it comes to large animals and really making that area around your barn, your yard, as fire resistant and safe as possible, so that you're not in as much danger and they're not in as much danger. And we've seen, again, groups of folks, you know, maybe they're living in an area where many people have horses, that they would come up with one central location, a parking lot or some other space that would be the safest to get animals. If they're not able to be loaded into a trailer, you might be able to ride a horse or walk a horse to that area. So really working with your community and finding out what's going to be an option for you. Having an emergency kit, and just like with Steve's presentation, this will be all available on our website, which I'll send out a link to. But these are things, you know, thinking about your emergency kit and including things that you might need for your pets, their food, medications, leashes, collars, harnesses, their bedding, something to clean up after them. And this might go for, you know, even if you're not having to evacuate to an emergency shelter, but you're going to be staying with, you know, maybe a friend in another area, just having like a crate or something to put your animal in, because maybe they're not going to get along with the other animals in the home in this temporary stay and everyone's under a lot of stress. Having photos and descriptions of each pet is very important. I keep mine on my crates. So each of my might have a crate for my dog and a crate for my cats. And on top of that is a photo of those pets actually with me, so that it also proves identification of them. It has their names, all of their medical needs and everything is on there. Their microchip numbers are on there, so that when they're inside, we can see who's in there and identify them that way. Having a first aid kit that includes, you know, maybe some items for your pets, and then stickers with your contact information. And once you know if you're needing to evacuate, where you're planning on going with your pet, that you can attach to their ID tags or collars. That way you can, if you are separated from them, you know where they're supposed to go, and others can help with getting them where they need to go. And if you forget all these things or are having to leave in a hurry, you can see how our staff sets up. We set up alongside the Red Cross in any evacuation center to offer pet supplies, pet boarding for folks that need that emergency shelter. So we do have those supplies on hand for folks that are having to leave in a hurry. The most important thing to get out of there if you're in an emergency is your pet. And so in case of an emergency, we recommend to folks that are sheltering in place, get your pet indoors as soon as you can. If you have an outdoor cat, for instance, and you know that you're not under an evacuation order, but you're recommended to shelter in place, get the pet indoors into a small area of your house, like your bathroom, and have them ready to go, so that once you're given that evacuation order, once you feel it's time to leave, that you are able to get them very quickly. And again, that crate training and familiarity with getting in the crate, you might even get them in the crate prematurely just to have them ready to go, so that you're not around your yard searching for them, especially as things may happen very quickly and you might not have time to capture an outdoor animal. When it comes to horses and other livestock, getting them into a barn or somewhere else that's safer, so that you can contain them and have them, again, ready to go in the event of an evacuation. And when you get those evacuation orders, or actually before you get them, we recommend leaving early and taking your pets with you. If you need to evacuate and you're able to take your pets with you, or able to call from assistance with your neighbors or from us, then have your pets evacuating in that plan if at all possible. And then again, while you're away, if you know that you're at work and you can't get there, if If a fire line hasn't been drawn yet, and you're able to have a neighbor or someone else help getting your pets out, that you make a plan to do that, especially if it's someone that's familiar with your pets, familiar with their behavior and handling when it comes to, you know, like large animals or animals that might be fearful, that you have a plan for them. And if needed, we are of course there to help as well. So I'll talk a little bit about what we do in the event of an emergency and the resources that our organization offers. So in the event that there is an evacuation or natural disaster, our team will first go out to rescue any animals that had to be left behind. So our team is trained and certified to go behind fire lines, and we can actually go in and evacuate animals out of harm's way if it's safe for our officers to do so, or we can go back in and feed animals that have been left behind if they're not in immediate danger. San Diego Humane Society, we have different contracts around San Diego, but typically a rural fire disaster would be handled by Department of Animal Services as the lead agency, and then we would work alongside them, and of course the county and the fire department. So we are not necessarily the lead agency when it comes to fire response, but we do have a team that works with them, and we can go in and actually rescue animals that were not able to be evacuated. And we can evacuate them ourselves using trailers, depending on, you know, size of the animal. We have a team that is trained to actually remove animals. And then when an emergency shelter is set up, there will be an option at one of the emergency shelters set up for small pet housing. So we set up crates and supplies so folks can leave their pets with us if they're not able to get into shelter with their pets at a hotel or other option with a friend. We have the supplies there, and then we'll usually set up a large animal shelter as well, where larger animals like horses, goats, pigs, all those big guys can be set up safely away from the fire. We also offer lost and found services on our website, of course, but we always recommend to people to, you know, check on their Nextdoor apps, check on social media, Facebook, because sometimes that's where people will post it in an emergency if they're not able to get the pet to us. And of course, having that microchip in your pet and having ID on your pet is going to help to prevent them from not being able to be reunited with you if they are found by one of our officers or special response team as they go out and respond to the emergency. And I have a little video here I thought would be a happy one. I have to, let me try to, it doesn't always want to play the way I want it to. Hold on just a second. Hopefully this will work this time. Oops. Nope.
Oh my gosh, look at that wigs! Oh my goodness, I miss
She loves her
so
mommy,
much.
that's for sure.
Oh my god.
That's here comes your Grammy.
My absolute favorite moment of this whole experience was reuniting Missy, who's here, with her owner Harold, who bottle fed her and raised her from being a kitten, and he told her she's 25 years old. And so seeing them be reunited was a really great moment.
That feeling is amazing. Everyone up here, even though with everything they're going through, is so grateful for everything that we are doing. They're just happy to be with their animals, and it's great to see that experience.
And for dogs, we're making sure all our dogs are happy and well fed, cleaned and walked and given enrichment, and that everyone's well cared for.
seeing the community come together to help everybody, but also the volunteers that are here that have lost everything, but they continue to show up every day to not only take care of maybe their own animals, but take care of everyone else's animals.
All right, and that's all I included on the presentation. I wanted to leave time for any questions. I hope I covered just general preparedness and what to do really to make sure that when you're in that situation that you yourself are prepared and that your pets are really included in that plan, and that you have some resources. So on here I put our website, sdhumane.org, and our main phone number. I also included Department of Animal Services because they are typically the lead agency handling animal concerns in the event of most natural disasters that affect the rural areas of San Diego. And so they would be the lead agency. Let's say, for instance, if you had to evacuate and you weren't able to get back to your animal behind fire lines, that would be the agency to call, and then they would triage that to us if we were the best option for response in that situation. My email address is also on here, leonard@sdhumane.org, and I can answer hopefully any questions. I see some in the chat, but I'm not sure if I'm able to open it. What is the best way to check if hotels are pet friendly if one must evacuate? So the last time that we were at, like I was at the Valley Fire Evacuation Center last year, and they were giving out hotel vouchers, I believe, through the Red Cross. So Steve might be the best one to answer this, but some places were making exceptions to pet friendly policies during the evacuation so that folks could go. And so, the folks that were there at the station were the ones that were also helping make those arrangements for people, I believe. So, oh yeah, Bring Fido is another great website to check out to find out where there are some options. And this is all good information depending on where you live or where your clients live to be researching this beforehand so that you can look at places in the immediate area that wouldn't be too hard to get to so that you're aware of places nearby you. And thanks for putting my email on there. I'll go ahead and stop sharing this screen so we can go back to everyone for any questions. And anyone can feel free, if you have a pet at home, feel free to share in the chat. Does anyone here have any pets at home or large animals? I always like to find out who everyone has. I have 2 cats and a dog, and 2 foster guinea pigs. If anyone is looking for pets, always trying to plug my little guys and find them a home. We have lots of small animals available for adoption. 4 dogs, awesome.
One tip I'd like to share with you, Laura, that our fearless leader, Melissa at the Red Cross does is she's trained her dog to come to the front door when the alarm sounds. So that she's been practicing, and so she'll test her fire alarms, go to her front door, has a little treat for her dog, and so the dog knows that's where it needs to go if an alarm goes off.
That is amazing, because most dogs and most pets just by nature will do the opposite of that when they hear something like that. If they're hearing it for the first time, their initial instinct would be to probably go hide somewhere, which is exactly what you don't want them doing if you're needing to evacuate quickly. So that is so smart. And that's along the lines of like the crate training and just preparing your pets, because they really don't understand the gravity of the situation. They're like, I don't want to go somewhere scary. I'm scared too. And I love that. That's such a great idea. Maybe I'll try. My pets are not very well trained for working at a shelter and knowing as much as I do about behavior. I have naughty pets, but I think I could probably, with some food, convince them to do something like that. So that's a wonderful idea. Another thing I think I did forget to mention that reminded me of is having a sign at your front door, and we do have them available. I don't think we sell them, but we give them away at events, and I can certainly get them to folks that would want them. A sticker that goes in your front window or front entryway that says, I have 4 dogs inside, so that responders would know who to look for. The really important thing with that is just to make sure you update it. Like I recently lost one of my pups, so making sure that I took him off that list so that people aren't left looking for an animal that's no longer with you. But that's another way to let people know who's inside if you are not going to be home when disaster strikes.
And that's one of the things that Steve would recommend is having a kit also for your creatures so that
Yes.
you've got your supply of medications or foods or license that you would have if you have to evacuate.
Yes, and that will be, and I'll share our website right now with folks, and it will also be sent out in the post-event email. But our website right now with Disaster Preparedness Month has a whole lot of information for folks on what to have in their kits. It's a little different for larger animals, livestock, than it would be for your pets at home, but really the idea is the same, just the type of materials you might need would be a little bit different. Any other questions? Any other pets? Only 4 dogs between everyone on this call, huh? I definitely have some pets for anyone that does not have any pets. We have lots of pets available for adoption. 4 kitties, awesome. Yeah, cats can be the hard one. Oh, dogs can too, as far as when it comes to wanting to leave in a hurry. I have one cat that likes to hide whenever anyone comes over, so just getting him used to that crate has really been the best thing to secure my mind and just give me a little bit more peace of mind that I know that he'll go into his crate when he's scared, which will be easier for me to transport. And leashes for dogs are also very important. Dog Honeybee and cat The Cuteness. Wow, that is a very official name. The Cuteness, I love that.
Okay, Laura, this is Shirley. Looks like we don't have any more questions in the chat. So I'd like to thank all the presenters this morning for presenting such great information to our members, and to thank all the attendees for attending. And thank you from the North San Diego County Realtors Association. And if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to any of the attendees, and you will receive an email with the information that they have provided. So you'll get that later today. All right. So thanks to everyone.
Have a good day.
Bye.